think that this is an exciting moment, and I like that he was humble on the point of, look, we might not end up with a vaccine, but I have been talking to several of our public health officials, including Dr. Fauci. There's a lot of excitement about several of these candidates. The Moderna candidate, the one out of Oxford University, a couple of candidates out of Germany using a brand new genetics platform. They're showing some really early success in terms of causing immunity and safety. More important, the safety profile looks good. So I think that there's reason for optimism on the science side of this. And to reiterate your point, it's got to be tested, really well tested, so the public will be reassured with it. And maybe we'll end up giving it to the highest risk groups first once it emerges. But we're going to see, we've never done anything like this before, Harris. Nothing ever on this timetable.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying in terms of who it would go to first. That was another question that the president was asked. You know, would it go to New York or some of those areas that have been hardest hit? He said, well, maybe. But the high-risk groups, now that makes a lot of sense. And you know all the problems we've had on the East Coast with nursing homes, particularly on the heels of some decision-making by the governor of New York, Cuomo, with putting COVID patients in some of them. So it's been a difficult hike. Real quickly, one last question before I have to let you go. So just in terms of this vaccine, though, if we don't have it, the president was also asked about schools and what needs to be in place. Doc Siegel, we're both parents. I get that we may have some ideas as parents, but what is the science of putting children back right now? Or in the fall, I should say.
Yeah, I like the CDC guidelines that came out, and I was glad that the president also liked them. The guidelines are basically to put in place social distancing in schools, to make sure that teachers are tested, to screen them rather than test them with questions, you know, looking for illness. But we need to understand that the vast majority of children who get COVID-19 are either asymptomatic or have mild symptoms, and letting them stay at home puts elderly people at risk anyway. I think that the schools are the engine of our society, and I would be really disappointed if we couldn't get them back online in the fall. So I think we have to approach that with optimism.
All right. Dr. Mark Siegel, so glad to have you along for the breaking news. And our coverage of what the president rolled out in the Rose Garden moments ago continues now. President Trump not only talking about the vaccine effort, but also China and also reopening the economy. Watch the president.
I'm concerned about everything, and I'm also concerned about our country. Our country has to get back. And you know, what you're talking is when you are doing what we did with the shutdown, that causes death also. It causes massive depression. It causes drugs. It causes suicide. It causes a lot of problems also. No, our country has to get back to work again.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts joins me now. And John, I was specifically asking to talk with you because if anybody can give me the play-by-play of the color that was also going on. So you have these medical experts. The sounds of the trucking horns I have to ask about because some of the reporters are having a tough time talking over them. The president, though, feeling a lot of love from them today.
Yeah, several times a day. The horns, they just come up on Constitution Avenue. It's kind of like a spontaneous roadblock. And this in other places as well. You know, we have to back a little later on and they do the same thing. But again, as we see protests that was today, these are all people who are saying we need to get the country back to work. And Peter Navarro, who was the president's trade advisor, now is involved in supply chain. You can still hear the horns behind me, is saying that if we don't open up the economy soon, we're not going to have an economy. And I think a lot more people are getting very what the lingering effects will be if we don't start things. This big trade-off. You got the pressure of the health side on one side of the fence, and you get the pressure of the economic side on the other side of the fence, and it's a very difficult balancing act because if you go one way or the other too much, you could create a catastrophe. I thought it was interesting what the president said, that while he hopes to get a vaccine that a vaccine is not the be-all and the end-all, that we will learn how to deal with this virus and we'll be able to treat hotspots that crop away, or that is a lot of researchers. people should go back to work. Saw standing behind the president with a mask on, and one of the reasons why Fauci is wearing a mask is that he had what was called a low-risk contact with the vice president's press secretary, who is now tested positive for coronavirus. Fauci has been sort of in a modified self-isolation, but that's why he was wearing a mask. But he said that he thinks the chances are better than not that we will get a vaccine. But again, Harris, it's no guarantee. And you saw the president with some caveats that we hope to get one by the end of the year. It's backing off a little bit from his earlier pronouncements that he wants 100 million doses of it by the fall. So we'll see where this goes, but there's no question they're pulling out all the stops. The president saying this is the biggest effort since the Manhattan Project in World War II to develop something and develop it quickly. It's obviously Manhattan thing that would kill to develop something for people, but the effort seemingly is about the same. Harris?
I have two things I want to ask you real quickly. So when you talk about the president and the way forward, I did understand him to say that they will be watching not only for hotspots, but what to do in those times when things will pop up. He said this may go away. You're citing some research out there that may lead some to believe that. But he did come back with, but if this rears its head again, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a plan. He says we are learning a lot. In that, what has been kind of the response on his team? You can see